Canada's agricultural sector stands at a crossroads, facing a crisis that could redefine its trade relationships and domestic priorities. For decades, Canadian farmers have been deeply integrated into global supply chains, with the United States, China, and a range of Asian and European markets serving as critical export destinations. Wheat, canola, soybeans, beef, and dairy have long been pillars of Canada's farm economy, but a combination of market disruptions, geopolitical tensions, climate pressures, and shifting global demand has put Canadian policymakers in a position they've been avoiding for years, deciding which trading partners to prioritize and which to let go. The crisis has been building quietly. Rising production costs, fueled by higher energy prices, increased interest rates, and unpredictable weather patterns, have hit farmers hard. Input costs for fertilizer, machinery, and transport have surged, while erratic weather has damaged yields across key provinces. In some areas, flooding has devastated fields, while others have suffered under prolonged drought. For farmers, these challenges are compounded by market instability, prices swinging wildly due to trade disputes and currency fluctuations. One major turning point came when several countries imposed new trade restrictions or adjusted tariffs, reshaping the competitive landscape. The United States remains Canada's largest agricultural export market, but political tensions ranging from disputes over dairy quotas to environmental regulations have made that relationship less predictable. In the meantime, Asian markets, particularly China, have been offering lucrative deals for certain crops, but these come with political risks and long-term dependency concerns. Canadian policymakers now face an uncomfortable reality. The country cannot fully satisfy all of its trading partners while also ensuring food security and stability at home. Supply is not infinite, and with harvest volumes lower than expected, there's simply not enough to go around. This means some export markets may need to be deprioritized, either through reduced quotas or outright suspensions of trade. The question is who gets cut off. For many, the instinct is to protect relationships with long-standing allies like the United States, whose integrated supply chains make them a dependable partner. Maintaining U.S. trade helps preserve jobs in processing, logistics, and manufacturing that are tied to cross-border agricultural flows. However, others argue that pivoting toward emerging markets could bring higher prices for Canadian goods, boosting farm incomes in the short term. Countries like China, Japan, and South Korea have shown willingness to pay premiums for high-quality Canadian grain, beef, and pork. The problem is that trade is not just about economics, it's about strategy. Cutting back exports to the U.S. could trigger retaliatory measures on Canadian imports, hurting industries beyond agriculture. At the same time, leaning too heavily on one or two Asian buyers could expose Canada to sudden disruptions if political relations sour, as was the case in past disputes over canola shipments to China. This is why some analysts recommend a balanced approach, maintaining smaller volumes to all markets rather than shutting any out completely. But farmers are running out of patience. Many are struggling to break even, with debt loads rising and operational costs climbing. Rural communities feel the squeeze as farm incomes drop, local businesses see fewer customers, and younger generations hesitate to take over family operations. Some producers have already been forced to sell land, downsize operations, or switch crops to survive. The government has floated several possible solutions. One involves implementing a targeted export strategy, allocating priority to markets with the highest long-term growth potential while supporting domestic food supply. Another proposal suggests expanding domestic processing capacity, so more Canadian-grown crops are turned into finished goods before export, adding value and creating jobs. There is also talk of increasing subsidies or support programs to help farmers weather this period of instability, though critics warn this could be costly and unsustainable. Meanwhile, global competition is intensifying. Countries like Brazil, Australia, and Russia are aggressively expanding their agricultural exports, often at lower prices, making it harder for Canadian products to compete without undercutting profitability. Add to this the fact that climate change is reshaping global production patterns, opening new regions to farming while making others less viable, and it becomes clear that the current crisis is not a temporary blip, but part of a longer-term shift. For Canada, the decision will likely come down to more than just economics. There are political alliances to maintain, environmental commitments to uphold, and rural livelihoods to protect. Choosing who gets cut off, or at least who gets less, will send a clear message about Canada's priorities. Will it favor stable, established partners, even if that means lower prices for farmers? Or will it chase high-value markets abroad at the risk of political backlash and overdependence on volatile relationships? The coming months will be decisive. Harvest forecasts, trade negotiations, and domestic policy announcements will all shape the path forward. One thing is certain: the days of having enough to satisfy every trading partner without compromise are over. Canada will have to make tough calls, and for farmers on the front lines of this crisis, those decisions can't come soon enough. If you want, I can also make this more conversational so it fits better for a spoken YouTube finance video. That way it will hit the 10-minute mark more naturally and keep audience retention high. Would you like me to make that version next?